All right, let's go ahead and get started. I want to make sure I'm respectful of everyone's weekend here, and especially Jarrod's time with us on this Saturday. My name is Cameron Marshall. I'm the Director of Alumni and Parent Engagement here at the college. Also with me as one of our moderators is Chad Isley, our Athletics Director and Golf Coach. And I want to wish everyone well. I hope everyone's enjoying beautiful weather just like we are here in Virginia. And this is a big weekend for golf. We have a great matchup tomorrow with Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, Tiger Woods, and Phil Mickelson. And then following that, of course, is the Tiger Slam premiere at 8 o'clock, I believe it is, Jarrod. And so we're very excited about that and very excited to have you with us prior to the premiere of this exclusive Tiger Slam documentary. Just one quick housekeeping note, if everyone would please submit any questions that you have through the chat window. We'll be sure to address as many of those as we can before the end of today's interview. And now I want to introduce Mr. Jarrod Ficklin. Jarrod is class of 2011, and he was an English major and rhetoric minor. While at Hampden-Sydney, he was the voice of the Tigers for football and basketball. And he also worked with the radio station, WFLO-FM, and was the host of a segment called The Tiger Den, which was dedicated to Hampden-Sydney basketball. Jarrod currently resides in Orlando, Florida. He's a four-time National Sports Emmy winner with Golf Channel and ESPN. And of course, he's the director of Tiger Slam, narrated by Michael Kenneth Williams, Golf Channel's newest documentary detailing Tiger Woods' unprecedented feat of winning 4 majors from 2000 to 2001. So with that, Jarrod, I'll give the mic to you here. And if you can just tell us a little bit about your journey, where you're from, how you got to Hampden-Sydney, your time here, and then how you landed in your current role.
I appreciate y'all for having me, and always good to just talk with any Hampden-Sydney alum and anybody that's still back on the Hill. So appreciate everybody having me. A little bit of backstory. I grew up just right down the road, a little east in Richmond, went to Monacan High School. And from there, just kind of my entire family went to Virginia Tech. So that's where everybody thought I was going to go. But knowing myself and the 18-year-old that I was at the time, I knew I wasn't going to be going to many classes if I went to a big school. So decided to stay close to home, go to Hampden-Sydney, try to figure out what I wanted to do. Sports had always been kind of a passion. And the sports information director at the time, Brian Hicks, was a good friend of mine. And their family just kind of led me to really looking at Hampden-Sydney. And I think it's a similar feeling as it is for a lot of students, is the minute you step on campus for the first time, it just kind of feels like home. And that's kind of what I always went back to. Decided to go there, went in thinking I was going to be an econ major, had Dr. Carilli, 8:30 a.m., first class, and not any fault of his. I just knew about 2 or 3 classes in, I was like, I do not have the brain power or the math mind to kind of follow this econ route. So really started trying to find myself in what I wanted to do, and sports had always been the constant thing in my life that I was interested in. So started trying to think about how can I work in sports, and that's really what I geared my time at the college towards. Started working with the basketball team first, and then some with the baseball team a little bit, and then eventually led to the football team the next season. Every coach was very supportive of me being the public address announcer. So I started being interested in traveling and doing road games, so started calling games with Ken and Watson on WFLO on the road for football and basketball. Gridiron Club, Roundball Club was very supportive of letting me kind of travel with the team and kind of be, although I was the only one kind of working with all these sports teams, it really helped boost my resume of kind of being a big fish in a small pond that Hampden-Sydney was. And eventually started doing some internships. Did an internship at WDBJ 7 in Roanoke after my junior year. Studied abroad at the Virginia program at Oxford between sophomore and junior year, just to try to get a little bit more culture and outside, and go to England for a summer. And then from there, honestly, when I graduated, did not have a job. And like many, was on LinkedIn, was just kind of starting at that point, I think. This was 9 or 10 years ago. And just started really applying. And about 2 months later, got a part-time statistics associate offer at ESPN. which was about 24 hours a week in Bristol, Connecticut, and just decided to go for it, just to try to get my foot in the door. And started there, I was basically plugging in the play-by-play of what was going on in the games for ESPN.com. And quickly realized what I missed most about sports was kind of that English background of what you get is like the analytic side of, seeing a story and then trying to relay what your thoughts on the story are. And that's really what production is behind the scenes. So I started applying for jobs as a production assistant, eventually got that, started working on Sports Center, started basically watching games, and I would produce a highlight each night for Sports Center. And from there, you grow, and as you get better at what you're doing, other shows select you. Started working for College Game Day. So I was on the road for that for a few years, and then started really getting into the feature world, which is mainly what I do now. And if you don't know what features are, it's basically mini documentaries. So if you've ever seen Tom Rinaldi do a story, I worked with him a lot. Some stories can be heavy, some stories can be fun, but it's a good range of emotion and skill and how you really convey that story and becoming a good storyteller. Eventually was offered a job down at Golf Channel about 4 years ago. Took that and have been kind of going down that route ever since, doing those kind of stories for Golf Channel until about a year ago, they knew that I was interested in doing some long form stuff. And they're like, well, we'll just throw you in the fire. Here's Tiger Slam. And that's how that came to be. And we started doing interviews last summer for it, mainly through the fall, more interviews. And then over around January, I started writing, February editing, then obviously coronavirus, COVID hits in March and things get delayed, but we're excited for tomorrow night, May 24th at 8 p.m. on Golf Channel will be the premiere of Tiger Slam. And that's probably babbled on a little bit too much there, but that is the short story of the last 15 years of my life. And here we are.
That's great. So tell us a little bit more about your time on the Hill. What's some of your most cherished memories on the Hill? Any lessons that you learned from your time at Hampden-Sydney that stuck with you, that you carried through your career, and even the production of this film?
I think it's I'm going to start with a cliche answer because I feel like you talk to anybody at Hampden-Sydney, the first thing I tell you is, you learn to write. That's the biggest thing. And I think the more you write, the more you get better at how confident you are in what you're saying. And Dr. Cavus was a big influence on me. I had him first semester. I know he's gone now. But he was a big influence. I had Dr. Claire Deal for public speaking, big influence on me. Dr. Steele now, who's at Penn State now, was my advisor, an English major, but Dr. Davis, another great English professor, that all of them really left a lasting impression on me and always supported me in what I was doing. And then honestly, a lot of the athletic coaches left probably, I don't want to say bigger, it's not a competition, but a huge impact on me and just allowing me to do what I wanted. I think that's the biggest thing that Hampden-Sydney kind of offers is really the support system. Because if you have enough initiative, people are there to support you and back you what you want to do 100%. As long as you show the initiative and show that you're interested, people will support you.
So I'll ask you something else for our current students, and then Chad, chime in here with any questions you have. The current students are living in a strange time right now with internships getting canceled. There's a lot of growing interest right now in your industry. We have a lot of students who want to go into sports broadcasting or marketing. And, what would you recommend for students, one, to adapt to this new normal that we're having to operate in? And how can someone from Hampden-Sydney with a liberal arts degree that's not necessarily sports marketing focused or any sort of sports related, anything at all, into your industry?
It's a great question. And it's honestly one I don't have the full answer for because, again, these are unprecedented times. I was lucky enough to have internships right before my senior year that kind of helped me have that experience. And I was also fortunate, the lady that was in charge of hiring the production assistants at the time at ESPN was an English major. And to be honest, that's what we talked about for 30 of the 45 minutes of my first interview at ESPN. So we kind of connected on that level of, all these, ESPN just they hire everybody from Syracuse, everybody from Maryland, and then like sprinkled around the country is everybody else. But being an English major at a liberal arts school is actually something I had that could stand out because everybody else was just broadcast journalism, English, rhetoric. What is rhetoric? That's a question I get a lot, so you have to explain that. But it really does get you talking, and it makes you stand out in a way. And as long as they see, English major, rhetoric minor, you sell the storytelling aspect of that. And then they're like, oh, he was involved in this many other things with sports as well. He's shown enough initiative to really prove that he wants to work in this industry. So I keep saying it. I'm getting bored of myself saying the word initiative, but that's to me one of the biggest indicators of success is initiative, self-awareness, knowing how you can kind of analyze yourself and what you need to get better in, and just kind of move on from there of reach out to the people you need to reach out to and see what can happen, and reach out just for advice. Don't just reach out just to see what the connections are that they might be able to help you. Reach out because you're interested in learning how they got where they are and how they can benefit you.
Jarrod, I love the Tom Rinaldi story. So that's interesting here. And I know for myself and many of us are really looking forward to tomorrow night. Can you talk a little bit more in detail about what it takes to put all the finished product together? So the traveling you did, how the hours that it took for the interviews, just kind of the background of putting something like this together.
Of Tiger Slam specifically?
Yes.
Okay. The first meeting we had about it was one of our executive producers. I think we had a meeting in February 2019. So we kind of threw around the idea of like, hey, next year we want to have a Tiger Slam documentary premiere at the Masters. Okay. So then they give you a budget and then you're off. And that budget includes travel for interviews. That budget includes commercial music. That budget includes rights fees. A lot of people don't really understand rights fees in TV, but Golf Channel, ESPN, whatever it is, if you air a documentary, the USGA owns the footage for the US Open. The R&A owns the footage for the Open Championship. Augusta National owns the footage for the Masters. The PGA of America owns the footage for the PGA Championship. The PGA Tour owns the footage for PGA Tour events. So when you think about that, you're paying per second to have the ability to air that at all. And that doesn't even include social rights. So anything social media, you have other rights that are involved with that. So Golf Channel, for example, doesn't have USGA rights or Augusta National rights for social media. So you'll never, from more than 24 hours, you won't see anything like that. And if you've seen a trailer for Tiger Slam, that's why there's no actual footage from that. You're also paying for Getty images, for any other AP images, anything like that. So there's a lot of things that go into the back of how to deal with budgets, but nobody's interested in the numbers of it. So I'll keep going. But the first interview we did was up in Rochester, New York. I interviewed Dan Hicks, who used to be the voice of the US Open. He does the Olympics. He still is the voice of the Open now, the Open Championship. And Roger Maltby, who's another on-course reporter. So that started, and then Johnny Miller, who was the old NBC golf analyst. Then before that, I basically come up with a big list of who I want to interview. And then we have different people at Golf Channel that can make the asks, or if I have the context, I can make the asks myself through email. And then from there, so that was Rochester, New York in May 2019. And this is all while I'm doing other features as well. So I'm trying to just make time for these interviews as we go from May until the end of the year. We got Butch Harmon to agree to an interview. I think it was in October. So did Butch Harmon and Bob May in Las Vegas. Did Mike Tirico and David Faraday interviews in Atlanta for the Tour Championship. Interviewed Jim Nantz right before he called the Raiders-Packers game in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Rick Riley, the old sports writer, interviewed in Los Angeles. David Duval in Jacksonville, but the biggest trip was Steve Williams to New Zealand. So I got to go to New Zealand in December. So Steve Williams is Tiger's old caddy. It was interesting to learn a lot about him just because me growing up, I knew him just being kind of Tiger's pit bull. And he just kind of took care of Tiger, was himself came across almost as like a jerk in the media sometimes just because he was protecting his guy. That's what he was doing. But going to New Zealand, all he really cared about was us enjoying our time there. And he was very open and honest about old stories with Tiger and really what led to the Tiger Slam. But that's literally just the interview process. So you come up with a big list of questions. Some interviews, they say you have, I'll give you 15 minutes. Some interviews are like whatever you need. So the Butch Harmon interview was an hour and a half. Steve Williams one was 2 hours. Scott Van Pelt, we interviewed up in Connecticut. But yeah, so these interview times range based on what we need from different people. And then in the writing process, I have a concept in mind of what we can do throughout this whole thing. And every interview kept circling back to, would you consider Tiger Slam to be the Grand Slam? Everybody's like, well, he had all 4 trophies on his coffee table at the same time. And that got me thinking, and then I remembered an old bite that Tiger had. And he said right before the Masters that the harder way to win the Grand Slam is in 1 calendar year. But if I could have all 4 on my coffee table, it's a pretty good problem to have too. So the coffee table is the catalyst for the open and the end of Tiger Slam, because there's one guy in the history of the earth that's had all 4 major championship trophies at the same time. So we put them all. I had to work with all of the USGA, RNA, Augusta, PGA to get all trophies to be able to film with. We put them on a coffee table, got a Tiger actor to kind of play what Tiger would look like back in the 2000, and that's kind of the catalyst of the beginning and end of the story. All in mind with this is going to be a high energy, grab people's attention from the beginning open. So then I go with Onyx's Slam as the main theme song for the doc that opens it. So we have to deal with rights to be able to pay Onyx to use that music as well. And then basically the entire month of February, I'm in edit, and that's choosing every music, what every single shot in the documentary is, whatever video you're seeing, along with whatever music it is, how it's edited to certain beats. And I'm working with my editor and collaborating in an editor room on that. Then it goes through different editing processes with our executive producers. We're paring down things, expanding to other sections, rewriting certain things here after I've written the whole thing in January. And all in mind, I've had who I want to be a narrator. So I come up with a list of who I really want. And I kept circling back to Michael Kenneth Williams because I really wanted to. Let's face it, golf sometimes it has the edge of a bowling ball. It doesn't really have much going on for it sometimes, which is good and bad. But I really wanted to grab people's attention with this and really make them remember how great of an accomplishment it was, and really drive the story and make it a really entertaining watch for the entire hour. And that's kind of what the goal was for the music, the narrator, the style it's written in, and then it all kind of comes together. In March, we knew it was going to get pushed back. We thought it was going to be pushed back to November, the Masters, but then after the success of The Last Dance on ESPN, people being starved for sports contests, our executives decided to move it back up from there, get it ready for May 24th, and we did. So that was a long story, but it's as you can say, it's a lot of things that go into it, and a lot of time, a lot of effort. It's not just kind of lazily thrown together just because Last Dance was doing well. It's a year-long process, and while other projects are going on, and you're trying to keep a main focus on this one as well.
So, Jarrod, one of the questions from our audience is, does the vision come together more after you collect all the content, or do you outline the story in more depth and then go out and get what you had in mind?
You have a vision. It's basically a lot of research. I'm just researching every story I can possibly find, and then I basically pare down. All right, who do I need to ask about certain things? And that's what strategy you kind of go into with the questions. But one thing with this is the meat and potatoes are there. Like anybody could just, here's 4 straight majors in a row. Here's highlights of it. Fine. But how do we weave stories in and out to make people keep watching and really give people a reason to root for the people and the characters that are in this? And so with that in mind, I wanted to do a backstory on Butch Harmon, how he started working with Tiger Woods. I wanted to do a backstory on Steve Williams, how he started with Tiger Woods. And I want to do a backstory on Bob May, that's the closest major, is when Tiger has this big battle with Bob May in the PGA Championship. He beats Bob May in the playoff for that event. And the thought process on that was, we all know Tiger. Everybody, you can't get enough Tiger, but you have basically this accomplishment in mind, but as a storyteller, my biggest questions are always how and why. So I wanted to really dive back on the details of how this happened. It's because he found 2 guys in Harmon and Williams that like only 2 guys could really keep up with his work ethic. And that's why he stuck with those guys for as long as he did. And then you have Bob May, who's this kind of like, it's almost this David and Goliath type of story, but you realize Bob May was who Tiger looked up to growing up. Bob May won as many American Junior Golf Association tournaments as Tiger as a junior. Tiger debuted in the Los Angeles Open at the age of 16. So did Bob May. So Tiger and Bob, although Bob was 7 years older than Tiger Woods, they both grew up in Southern California, playing the same tournaments, and Tiger was just following in his footsteps, and he knew Bob May wouldn't go away that whole last day when they were paired together at the PGA Championship. So you have those things in mind, but you don't want to really lose the meat and potatoes, which is Tiger Woods. And then from there, you kind of create a concept for the beginning and end to really grab people's attention, but then round it out and really not forget what the historical significance of this accomplishment were.
Great. What about the music component? Music has such a huge impact on how these stories are told. And I know as director, you were talking to us right before this interview about how many different things you have your hands on. How do you go about selecting music and finding the right song for each moment in the documentary?
It's a good question. We have a lot of internal databases with thousands of different kinds of songs on it. But when you really want to spend money on a commercial song that can grab people's attention and be kind of a catalyst for a documentary, you got to pick the right one. And again, that goes back to the budget thing again of, I had a number for my music budget. So if I go over it, that looks bad on me. And so I kind of, just for example, Beatles songs are ridiculously expensive. So we don't even think in those kind of realms. We think about like what's best for the piece, what kind of really vibe we're going for. And Slam by Onyx just kept coming back to me. I'm a big 90s hip hop guy, so I love all that stuff. And just, it was almost weird. I kept hearing it in the car if I was like shuffling around different radio stations, and with it being titled Slam, that's kind of, it fits our theme for the piece. And then from there, I kind of create the font look, which Slam magazine is this very popular basketball magazine. And that's kind of what we mirrored our font after as well, just to keep this subtle theme that a lot of people won't recognize, but it does subconsciously kind of like help you really tie everything together in the documentary itself. And then, for the other music, I spent money on another commercial song that's in it as well, because PGA Championship was held in Louisville, which is the birthplace of Muhammad Ali. Tiger was playing with Jack Nicklaus that week, so it has this theme of all the greatest. So Logic's I Am the Greatest is also in that for this montage we do at the beginning of segment 3. But the rest of it is we have these big databases, and you kind of just search by themes or different bands of what kind of music you're really going for. If I want a big like emotional song, I'll search emotional orchestra, and you search all these little keywords and they kind of pare it down for you, and then you just play these hundreds of selections that they give you and choose hopefully the right one.
So being that this is a documentary on Tiger Woods and his career in golf, how much of a role does he play in dictating what you pull together and the final product?
Absolutely none. This is a lot different. So I keep going back to The Last Dance because I know a lot of people have watched it and it's a big discussion and topic right now. Michael Jordan's production company very much helped produce that. And it was great and it was very entertaining and everything, but that's why the focus is on Michael Jordan, because he agrees to do it. He sits down for 3, all at least hour-and-a-half long interviews. Tiger was supposed to sit down with us in March, but then he backed out of Bay Hill, and then coronavirus hit, and then we decided to give people what they want as sports content. So he doesn't have a live interview in this. So with that in mind, you have to do all this backtracking of every press conference from 2000, 2001 in the Tiger Slam. I had logged by our loggers at Golf Channel and had to go through each thing and pick out different bites that would work in different places. You hear from Tiger throughout the entire documentary, but it's old file sound from 2000, 2001, which in a way, in the end, I think it kind of helps bring you there more than hearing from him now. But as far as journalistic integrity, Tiger had 0 say in this.
Very interesting. Chad, anything on your end?
Jarrod, what is there anything that as you as an individual, somebody who was a young boy when this was going on, was there anything that you kind of preconceived notion of going into it that you came out of it and just saw it in a different light after doing this?
I think so. I mean, you kind of know going into things, you're always going to have more of an appreciation just because you yourself are going to dive into the story and make it your own and put a lot of work into it. So you're going to be interested in the whole process. But Rick Riley puts it in a good way later in the documentary in the last segment. He says, when you think about it, Tiger beat 156 guys at the US Open. And he beat another 156 guys at the British, another 150 guys at the PGA Championship, another 95 guys or whatever it is at the Masters. So when you think about it, he went 550-0. This isn't a tennis tournament where you beat 8 guys, you get there. This isn't March Madness. You beat a few teams, have 6 wins, get there. This is 550 guys over the course of a 10-month span. And when you really start thinking about it like that, and you start looking at some of the ridiculous stats of how bad he was beating the field, he won the first 2 majors of the Tiger Slam by 23 shots combined. That just doesn't happen anymore, and you kind of get an appreciation for his dominance. And that's really what led to the open of the Tiger Slam doc. We go through this thing about, everybody's got a routine. Like I wake up, I hit snooze 3 times. I don't really have a real energy to start the day a lot of the time. Tiger was getting up at 5, running, going to play 9 holes, coming back, working out, going to eat, coming back, playing 9 holes, banging more balls in the rain. It was just a constant drive for this perfect swing and this work ethic, that his routine was completely different than ours and led to something extraordinary. And when you think about it like that, that's what kind of got at least the creative juices flowing for the open of the piece, and really why I kind of created this angle of it to make it feel young, make it feel edgy, because I remember watching the Tiger Slam, but did I really know what it was at the time? No. And that's really what I want to kind of drive home to everybody, help people reminisce that do remember it, but really put it into historical significance for people that don't.
So I won't ask you to pick favorites, but did you have a favorite interview moment, maybe rather than a favorite interviewee? Or if you want to.
There's a few. Scott Van Pelt's great. I know Scott a little bit just being back at ESPN and us traveling on the road, traveling to do golf together when I was at ESPN, because I used to travel and do the British Open every year as well, every year to do the Masters with ESPN. And so just talking with him was good, but I think the best thing about these interviews is people get really candid. Like, they're very animated. There's a few F-bombs that we have to censor because we're Golf Channel, don't have the ability to not censor like The Last Dance did. But Butch Harmon tells some great stories about, there was a good story about, he lives in Las Vegas, so that starts the story and you know where this is going. But the week before the US Open, Tiger came down to his golf school, played the golf course. Butch said it was 30-mile-per-hour winds, and Butch had just started working with amateur at the time, Adam Scott. 30-mile-per-hour winds, Tiger goes out, shoots 64. Adam Scott at the time said he played the best he'd ever played, shot 72, and was like, all right, shit, yeah, I need to get better to try to keep up with this guy. And then Butch said immediately when Tiger got off the course, he went straight to the casino and had a very profitable week as Tiger went on to win by 15 strokes.
Very cool. Did you have any interactions with Tiger during the collection of content or any time in your career prior to this documentary that are noteworthy for you?
I've met Tiger before. Nothing with this documentary. We've done little interviews with him in the past, just when we kind of gather a bunch of pros together and ask them these kind of rapid fire questions for other pieces that are going on. The first time I met Tiger was actually at the 2013 US Open at Marion. I got to walk with Andy North, the on-course reporter for ESPN. And he knows Tiger, so we kind of walked with him in a practice round for a couple holes, and just, I mean, I grew up playing golf. I grew up being a huge Tiger fan, so that I didn't say many words. I don't get starstruck very often. I've been very fortunate in my career to meet a lot, but that was a big moment.
Very neat. Do you have any aspirations for any particular sports star that you hope to interview in the future, or any career aspirations with the Golf Channel that you hope to meet in the near future?
It's a good question. I mean, ESPN just did it last year. I said at the very beginning, my entire family went to Virginia Tech, so I would have loved to done something on the Mike Vick documentary. Just growing. I mean, I was in 5th grade when Mike Vick was there, so he's kind of a cult hero in Blacksburg. Obviously, he's been through some other things as well on the more negative side, but that in a way almost humanizes him to have this full round out story with a lot of depth. But that's really what I look for. I mean, Tiger's one of the most interesting guys in the world. I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg with Tiger Slam. I do think Tiger will end up doing a documentary like The Last Dance, where, you know, we get the 8-part documentary, we get the 10-part documentary of, you talk about rises and falls. I mean, nobody had a higher high than Tiger, and nobody's had a lower low, and multiple. But it's also what makes his comeback so intriguing to everybody, that people remember rooting for Tiger when he was on the top, and people remember rooting for him when he was coming back. And that kind of emotion and whatever human elements we can get, that's really what has always interested me. So really, whatever it is, as long as we get to humanize these people we put up on these pedestals, that's what I am interested in.
Chad, you want to jump in here?
Jarrod, I don't want you to, I certainly want you to enjoy tomorrow night, but just kind of what's next for you? I know you work on other things, but what's kind of what are the other things that you're out there working on right now, or will be soon in the future?
Well, Live From every major. Live From's a big show on Golf Channel at every major. They're live the entire week. I basically write and produce a lot of features that support those shows, so we'll gear up toward that. As we get going, one of my biggest project normally each year is the Open. So the last few years I've gone over to the UK, whether it's been in Northern Ireland last year, Carnoustie the year before, Birkdale in England the year before that, and Royal Troon the year before that. And I basically produced this week-long shoot where I just go do a bunch of these little local things. I come back, I write these teases, or kind of these things that run at the beginning of top of hours or the beginning of events. And then these little vignettes, which are like these 30-second to a minute things that run out of commercial break sometime. And if you've ever watched Game of Thrones, actor Stephen Delane voices over all that stuff. So I get to work with him each year. We won't be able to do that this year because the Open was canceled due to COVID, but we'll gear everything towards PGA Championship in August. Obviously, the Masters in November is going to be a big wrinkle in the golf schedule. But if you want to look at it glass half full, that means we get 2 Masters in 5 months. So we'll be more positive of that. And we'll be looking for stories and whatever we can highlight certain pros or any stories that involve golf.
Jarrod, do you have anybody in the industry who you look up to in particular, or try to model your career path on? Or
I think just starting with Tom Rinaldi. I mean, the first feature I ever did was with him. I don't have really any aspirations to be on camera like he is, but as a storyteller and someone who listens and interviews, that there aren't any better. So I was very fortunate in who I got paired with early in the beginning in the sports I worked in, being college football and golf too, that he does, where I got to kind of produce some stories for him and see how he works. People think he just sits down and writes, but like he would call me on the phone. We'd talk for 2 hours as he's like saying out these lines, like, do you like this? Do you like this? Where do you think we should go with this? And it's just a big collaborative back and forth with him being the catalyst. And then once he writes the script, I go to the edit room, and the rest on the video and the music and everything is from the producer, and it's a big collaborative effort. And but Tom's method of really understanding everybody's journey really speaks to me just as an interviewer. No matter how much prep you can do in the interview room, the best trait of an interviewer is listening, because the best answers you get are on follow-up questions. They're not on, let me look at the piece of paper. Okay, I just asked number 7. Let me go to number 8 and go on. It's listening, making eye contact, being engaging with whoever the subject is, and really getting the best out of them.
A question from the audience is about the way that cable and sports networks have evolved. What sort of pros and cons do you see with the development of topic-specific channels like Golf Channel and other conference channels, SEC Network, stuff like that, compared to some of the quote, old guard sports networks like ESPN, CBS, etc.?
Well, I mean, it's no secret cable is changing, and it's honestly been going downhill for a while. Cable networks have been, no matter if it's sports or cooking or anything, cable networks have been laying people off every 3 years for the last 8 or 9 years now, because everything is geared more towards what's the immediate content I can get right now? What can I watch? What's on my phone? Let me be entertained for this short amount of time and then go do something else. Cable is never really operated like that. We want to keep you in front of the TV for as long as possible. We want you to pay for our subscription. And that's good and bad. It's bad because people get laid off, people lose jobs, and it's a serious thing as millennials and everybody else are continuing to cut cable. But it also makes us grow. I mean, my favorite quote, which I try to live by a lot, is when I was working at Game Day, we got to spend some time with Nick Saban, and one of the things he always says is a key to success is just getting comfortable being uncomfortable. So that's just putting yourself in uncomfortable situations and trying to grow from them all the time, because the more comfortable you are and stagnant you are, the more you'll flatline and just stay there and plateau. So is it challenging? Yes, but I think that'll drive cable companies and creative types to come up with more creative things that people want to consume. And business models will just need to adapt to that and look more in the future.
So here's a couple of personal questions that were submitted from some of our students in advance of the interview. And then Chad, feel free to jump in here too. Do you have any personal sporting events that are on your bucket list, or any golf courses that you always wanted to play that are still on the list?
Augusta's on the list for wanting to play. I've gotten to go a lot, which I think it's starting to get annoying now because I've been there probably 9 or 10 times and haven't been able to swing a club, although I'm not sure I'd want to damage the ground. I feel like it's sacred ground you don't really want to dig your divots into. But I've been really lucky. Like I was on the field for 4 national title games for college football. Rose Bowl, the Open is still my favorite. I love the Masters, but I love the way of golf and like style golf over there. I'd love to play Pine Valley. I'd love to play Cypress out near Pebble Beach. But I've been very lucky, so I'll count my blessings for that one instead of thinking what I haven't done so far.
Great. Chad, you want to jump in?
This will be my last one. This comes from my team. So the golf team, we're in a van together, and we travel quite a bit, and so we obviously we talk a lot of golf. And their favorite golfer is who we spend a lot of time talking about is Kevin Kisner. So do you have have you interviewed Kevin Kisner at all? And if so, can you tell us, is it really what you see is what you get with them?
Kiz is one of the most what you see, what you get guys there is. There's more than you would think on tour. I've interviewed Kevin Kisner twice, each time short little like 10-minute rapid fire kind of things, but each time he comes in with a how you doing, like what's going on, like real laid back. He doesn't need to turn anything on when the cameras go on. He's who he is, and that's very refreshing to have. A lot of guys are actually like that. Justin Thomas is like that. Some of the guys aren't like that. I won't name those names, but yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky to be around a lot of those guys. And no super personal stories with kids or anything, as it's just been more unprofessional, like
Sure.
kind of said, short interview. But would I like to have a few beers with him? Yeah. So I think I'm like everybody else in that aspect.
Well, minus Tiger, I think I think
he might make me shotgun him, but I don't know. So.
Jarrod, what's one big lesson that you learned during the creation of this documentary that you'll carry into future documentaries that you're filming?
Always have a backup plan. Some things just aren't going to work out. We wanted to get Phil Mickelson interviewed for this. We couldn't. We wanted to get some other players interviewed. We couldn't, just based on their schedules and based on what they want to do, which is perfectly their right. There's no hard feelings to that, but that's why it's just, you have to be as prepared as possible. And my biggest thing is knowing and understanding all the content you have before you create the story. You can have a vision for how you want the story to lay out and what the timeline you want to look like, but without those puzzle pieces to make it work, you can't. Sometimes I struggled with, okay, well, I can do this, but then I didn't really think about how it was going to fit in visually. You need to do that. So it's just with anything, be as prepared as possible and work as hard as you can, and that'll take you far.
Great. Another question from one of our students, and I know we're kind of asking you to look into a crystal ball here with this question, but just as a golf enthusiast yourself, any personal predictions about how much life Tiger has left in his career with winning majors, and where you think he'll go?
I mean, I'm no analyst, but I think it's Augusta and the Open are the two I think he has the best chances at. I personally think he will win another major. I actually think this year sets up in a way very well for him, because you have to be on for a shorter span of time. And if you look back at how he when he won Zozo in Japan last year, he may have been playing better than he was at the Masters last year when he won. So, and in the history of golf, other than Jack Nicklaus, nobody's been better at peaking at the right time. And if he can get to a peak for a 2-month stretch where there's 3 majors, he might be able to sneak one out. I think he'll have harder time winning U.S. Opens. I would say PGA, but I mean, 2 years ago he challenged Brooks pretty good at Belle Reve. So, you know, when he can go low, he can go low. But I think his knowledge of Augusta and his knowledge of link style courses and just being a smarter player, I think he'll have some more longevity as long as with him, it's always just if he stays healthy.
Right. Well, thank you. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I promised you we'd finish up within an hour, and you've been very generous getting on here today with us in the middle of a Saturday afternoon in advance of your great premiere tomorrow. So on behalf of everyone who's on and on behalf of the college, I just want to thank you for taking the time to be a part of this and make it possible. We're looking forward to sharing this with those who weren't able to join us today. And you've had so much success since you graduated. You've done so much, and you know, we certainly want to recognize and celebrate you as one of our very accomplished alumni. And so if you can ever come back to campus, we invite you to come back as soon as possible. I know you said earlier you were hoping to get back soon. It's been a while. So please come back, and hopefully Chad and I can get out on the links with you down in Florida maybe one day soon. But any final words for the group, or you know, just anything about your documentary that you want to share before we close?
No, just appreciate people joining. Like I said, I'm always happy to get back to Hampden-Sydney. They gave me a lot, so happy to return the favor. And I'm not where I am today without Hampden-Sydney. So I appreciate all the support I've been given and am still given. And yeah, just with Tiger Slam, I think if anybody was listening, try to keep an open mind and just an appreciation of how much work goes into it. Documentaries are one of those things that, you know, they're never really finished. You just kind of get an air date, and then you are able to stop overthinking everything that's in it. Every edit has a purpose. Every music selection has a purpose, and we're just trying to tell the best story we can and keep viewers engaged as best we can. And hope everybody sees that and tunes in Sunday night at 8.
Great. Well, thanks again. We look forward to following your future successes, and again, can't wait to see you in person. And thanks for helping us do this today virtually.
Absolutely. Gotta get back tailgating. So I appreciate you guys having me, and like I said, glad to do it.
Thanks, Jarrod. Best of luck.
Thanks, fellas. See y'all.
Thanks. Take care. Go Tigers.
See ya.